one of the things you discover about the early church is they were a people highly committed to prayer, to praying together, to praying through their problems, to praying when things arose that bothered them. And I don't know that that's always true of the modern church. We've found other means, we think, to solve our problems. And the result in the church and in our culture is chaos because we are no longer a people of prayer. We're people that think that we need to do other things instead of giving the problems to God. So let me just show you the problem and what God did. Acts chapter 12, verses 1 to 16. Herod Agrippa throws the. By the way, this king that's going to appear here, Herod Agrippa I, is the grandson of Herod the Great, the Herod that killed the baby boys when Jesus was born. He's his grandson. Herod Agrippa I finds the apostle James and executes him. And that makes him so, people are so happy, yay, you killed James. He says, hey, if killing one worked, let's kill more. So he hunts down the apostle Peter, arrests him, and throws him in prison. Watch what happens. It says, and when Herod had seized Peter, he put Peter in prison, delivering him over to 4 squads of soldiers. 4 squads of soldiers would be 16 soldiers, and they would be rotating a watch. So there would be 4 soldiers on duty at any time of the day or night. So 4 soldiers at a time in the prison, 16 total watching one little apostle. To guard him, intending after the Passover to bring him out to the people. But Peter was kept in prison, but the church, but earnest prayer for him was made to God by the church. Listen to that again, because I fumbled the reading, and I want you to hear it right. So Peter was kept in prison, but earnest prayer for him was being made by the church. Problem, he's in prison. Results, they're praying for him. You're looking in a window now at how the early church deals with problems. Verse 6, now when Herod was about to bring him out that very night, Peter was sleeping between 2 soldiers, bound with 2 chains. 2, not 1. 1 chain's not enough, 2. And sentries before the door were guarding the prison. And behold, an angel of the Lord stood next to him, and a light shone in the cell. Peter, that is the angel, struck Peter on the side and woke him, saying, get up, quickly. And the chains fell off his hands. And the angel said to him, dress yourself, put on your sandals. And he did so. And he said to him, wrap your cloak around you and follow me. By the way, I like how the angel has to give him each set of instructions. Put your shoes on, put your clothes on. Because Peter's just kind of, his hair is disheveled. He's got the wrong shoe on the wrong feet. And he's just kind of daydream walking through this scene. He hasn't realized it's real. Look at verse 9. He went out and followed the angel. He did not know what was being done by the angel was real. He thinks he's dreaming, but he thought he was seeing a vision. When he had passed through the first and second guard and came to the iron gate leading to the city, it opened in front of them of its own accord. Now, question. What time of year is this happening? It told you at the beginning of the text. What is that? About verse 3. It tells you it's Passover time. This all reminds us of another Passover. That is, remember the Exodus where Passover happened? But here it's not Pharaoh, it's not the evil king Pharaoh, it's the evil king Herod. And remember how Moses came to the sea and he held out his staff and the sea parted in front of him? Here you don't have the sea part, but you do have the iron gates part in front of Peter. Isn't that awesome? Say yes, because that took me a week and a half, so... It opened in front of them of its own accord. And they went out and walked along the street, and immediately the angel left him. When Peter came to himself, what? He said, now I'm sure that the Lord sent his angel and rescued me from the hand of Herod. He'd been walking along thinking, this is too good to be true, this is too good to be true, this is too good to be true. Now he gets outside, he goes, oh, it's true. I'm sure. In fact, notice that words there. He says, now I am sure. I'm sure. I know God has acted on my behalf. I'm confident that what happened has happened in reality, that God has stepped into reality and has helped me. It says, Now I'm sure, I'm confident the Lord sent his angel and rescued me from the hand of Herod and from all the Jewish people were expecting. They were expecting to kill him. And when he realized this, he went to the house of Mary, the mother of John, whose name is Mark. That's John Mark, the writer of the Gospel of Mark, where many were gathered together and were. What are the church doing? Window into the church. What's the church doing in the middle of this crisis? They're praying. And they're still praying because they think he's still in prison. Well, here he comes with good news. And he knocked on the door of the gateway, and a servant girl named Rhoda came to answer. Now, this is great. Sometimes you have to tell people where the good parts of the Bible are. You thought the jailbreak was great? Wait till you see this little girl. She's wonderful. It says, recognizing Peter's voice, in her joy, she did not open the gate, but ran and reported that Peter was standing at the gate. They said to her, "You're out of your mind." Isn't that wonderful? But she kept insisting that it was so they kept saying, "It's his angel." That's bad theology, by the way. Does it encourage you the early church also needed credit? Like, you don't have angels that look like you. Like, do you think when you gain weight, your angel gains weight? Like, anyway, that's just, the Bible's not teaching you there. It's just telling you they believe this weird thing. But Peter continued knocking. And when they opened it, they saw him and were amazed. Oh, God answered our prayers. But motioning them with his hand to be silent, he described to them how the Lord had brought him out of prison. Look at verse 17. He says, tell James, tell the church that's meeting. He moves on. Verse 18, the soldiers are mystified. Like, we don't know where he went. Herod executes all of them. Let me tell you what I like about this story. Just kind of, what I like about this is I like that scene of the church in the middle of a crisis. Their world, the great apostle is thrown in prison. Already one apostle has been murdered. And what does the church do? The church is earnestly, and notice that word there, the church is earnestly praying. They come together and they're pouring out their hearts to God. That word earnestly there is the word ektonos. And it means, like, it's usually used of stretching a muscle. Like when you guys are working out and you're stretching your muscles, or you see somebody's really strong, they come out and they stretch their muscles. That'd be the word ektonos. It's to earnestly stretch. This church is stretching their spiritual muscle. They come together, they say, we're not strong, we're old and we're weak and we're women and we're slaves and we're people that aren't necessarily strong in society, but we're strong before the Lord, and they stretch their muscle before God. I like it. But not only do I like the church praying together, I just like the fact that on the night before he's going to be executed, what is Peter doing? I like Peter sleeping. I think that, don't you guys think that's beautiful? Peter's just down there, he's sleep. Does it remind you of a master sleeping in a boat? Or did he learn to sleep in a storm? Can I say, when you know people are praying for you, it just gives you peace. It just gives you peace just to know that people are praying for you. How could he sleep in a moment like that? Well, I think Peter inside is at peace knowing that he may see the Lord at any moment. And he's okay with that. He's okay with that if that is the final answer. But ultimately, Peter knows God's in control. And if I can suggest this, I think the sleep that comes over Peter is supernatural. God gave him rest in that hour. You wouldn't naturally have rest in a moment like that, but it came from God. And one of the things God can give you at the worst moments of your life, when you're a person of prayer and you're at peace with God and you know God's in control, is he just gives you supernatural peace. He can give you rest in that hour. Maybe that's what you need to ask for from God today is, God, would you just give me rest? In the middle of all these trials, would you remind me that you're in control? There's other people praying for me, and would you give me the supernatural peace of God? By the way, notice how God reverses the situation. Peter's sleeping. The angel comes, wakes him up, and now the guards are sleeping. Peter walks right past the sleeping guards. One more thing I like about this story, and then I'll show you some things about prayer. I just think that little servant girl named Rhoda, I like her. I love her. Are you with me? Isn't this a beautiful scene? Peter knocks on the door. Rhoda goes down, and he says, it's me. It's Peter. And this little girl is so happy. I don't know how old she is, 16, 20, 30. I don't know. But this woman is so happy. She doesn't even open the gate. She knows her church has been praying. She runs upstairs and she says, Peter's here. And she's just bursting with joy. And they say, stop it. But did you notice it says she kept on there? No, he's here. He's down there. And they're trying to dissuade her. They go, no, it's his angel. It's a ghost. And she won't have any of it. And I just think There's not a lot of names in this passage. I think God took delight in her. It doesn't name the people who are praying. It doesn't name the church leaders of this church. All it describes at this moment is Peter, Herod, and one more person. The little servant girl gets her name mentioned in the Bible. No, why? I think God took joy in her. I think there are times God just looks at it and goes, oh, I like you. And I think that's true. I don't know. I look at it, I like just just on the things I like in that, I like Peter sleeping at the moment of his trial. I love that church praying for Peter. And I love that little girl, Rhoda, who just takes so much joy in the Lord at that moment. When you look at that church praying, what I hope it does is it stirs something in you that says, oh, I want to be a person of prayer. Because I suspect what you would say is, I don't have to ask for the problems to pray about. I don't have to bring you a sermon, how to get a problem so you can pray. What I'm willing to guess is you already have problems. Am I right? Picture Peter chained. You're chained to some problems. There are some soldiers around you, and there's some heartache near you already. Am I right? So you don't have to ask for the problems, but here's what many Christians do is they get kind of misty-eyed when it comes to prayer, and they go, well, you know, one of these days I want to be a person of prayer. I want to be a man of prayer. I want to be a woman of prayer. I want to be a dad who prays for his kids, or I want to be a church member that prays. And for some of you, for the prayer thing, it's kind of on your spiritual bucket list. Like one of these days, I'm going to get down to prayer. Can I tell you, when it comes to prayer, you can't be passive about this thing. You've got to be like good Marines. You have to be militant. You have to plan to pray. You have to go at it like you are going to. You have to be like you're going to war. You have to be driven. You have to be a warrior. Why do you think we call someone a prayer warrior? Because they go at it with a plan. They have thought through how I'm going to do this. Now, hear me. The most important thing for you, if you want to be a person of prayer, know what it is? You go, yes. It's that I set a time. I want you to set a time, but that's not it. The most important thing, if you want to be a person of prayer, is that you have people you pray with. Is that you have people that you pray with. And here's why. You, for a while, will carry on a prayer life, but then you'll get sloppy in your prayer habits, stuff like that. And you need that person that'll bring you back alive. Notice who prays for Peter? Not one person, not two people, but the entire church gathers together, and they're encouraging each other in the area of prayer. What you notice often in the Bible is that prayer is not a one-person deal. It's a community effort. You pray together. Now, that's not outrageous. It's what you guys do at the gym. You have a gym buddy. When you start getting sloppy on your gym habits, your gym buddy goes, hey, we got to go to the gym. Am I right? You do a little bit of a workout, and your gym buddy goes, you can do better than that. Well, if you would do that at the gym, you start to eat that donut, and your gym buddy goes, you can eat that, but that's 40 more. And all right. You need that spiritually. If you need that physically, how much more do you need that spiritually? So my question to you, who prays with you? You know who prayed with Peter most often? A guy named John. It was his best friend. In fact, in Acts chapter 3, Peter and John are going to the temple at the hour of prayer. These two are always praying together. So who prays for you? When you're in trouble, who is it you can text, you can call, and you can say, hey, would you pray for me? And you know they're going to pray for you. Now, some of you are asking this, though. You're going, well, okay, that's a pretty cool miracle. The angel comes down, sets it. Why do we see miracles today? 2 reasons you don't see miracles today. Write these down. Number one, we don't see miracles today like the way the early church saw miracles in their time. Number one, because we don't pray. Jesus said, you have not because you ask not. And so I think it is a failure to pray. But often, I don't think it's a failure to pray. I think it's a failure to see. Sometimes God is answering our prayer request right in front of us, and we don't even see it. Was that true of the early church? Little Rhoda goes running upstairs, and she says, God has set Peter free. And they go, stop it, we're praying for Peter. It's like, no, did you ever consider maybe God would answer the prayer request differently? You know how they're praying? They're probably praying, Lord, tomorrow when he goes to court and he goes before the Jewish people, would you show him favor? And God goes, no, I got a better plan than that. I'm just going to sit there. Sometimes God answers your prayer in such dramatic ways that you don't even see that God answered the prayer. Had a friend came to me terrified, said, you got to pray, you got to pray for me. They were looking at me and they did that, and I've got a spot on my lungs. And he said, and they did it again. I was so scared that I have a spot on my lungs. So I started praying. few months later, I didn't hear anything about it. I said, hey, brother, what happened to the spot on your lungs? He goes, oh, it's the funniest thing. He said, I went in, they scanned me again. I guess they made a mistake the first 2 times because it wasn't there. I said, or maybe it was there and God's church prayed and you've been healed and you're just not seeing the miracle God has done. Sometimes God's doing stuff right in front of us and we don't even see it. Amen? So here's what I want to do. Let me show you 5 things that I just want you to believe when you pray. What you believe about someone you're talking to matters. So let me just show you out of this little text 5 things you believe when you pray. Now, these 5 things I'm going to give you, they're so important to your prayer life. If you believe these 5 things about God, it's going to change the way you pray. You're going to pray with greater heart. You're going to pray with more conviction. If you'll believe these 5 things, these are all things about God. If you will believe these 5 things about God, you'll know what it means to pray with faith. So let me just build into your life 5 things to pray with faith. Number 1, I want you to believe this about God, that God hears. God hears. When you pray, you need to know this, that your prayers don't just go to the ceiling, but there's a holy God, and he doesn't need angels to take your prayer and carry them into his presence, but the very holy God is listening to every word you say. You need to believe that God, in fact, Peter himself said in 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 12, he said, the eyes of the Lord are on the righteous, and his ears are open to their prayers. Isn't that great? It doesn't say some of the righteous. It doesn't say Bible righteous. It doesn't say Baptist righteous. It doesn't say Catholic righteous. It doesn't say Lutheran righteous. It doesn't say white righteous or black righteous. It just says the eyes of the Lord are on the righteous and whoever they are. Whatever culture they come from, whatever city they live in, wherever you're at, if you're a child of God, his ears are open to you, whoever you are. Remember Peter's prayer buddy? What was his name? John. Good. John, 1 John 5:14, John said this. This is the confidence we have. In other words, he says, I believe this for sure. This is the confidence we have in approaching God. That if we ask for anything according to his will, he hears us. So that's number 1. I want you just to believe. When you pray, God hears you. Number 2, I believe this, and I want you to hold on to this. This is what it means to pray with faith. Not only that God hears, but you need to know that God cares. God cares. God cares about the situation you're in and the problems that you're having. I think God looked down on that little church, and they felt so small that the king was against them. Pretty soon the Roman Empire would be against them. But God looked down on that little church, and he cared about them. You know, 3 times in the story about Moses coming before the burning bush, God said to Moses, he said, I'm concerned about my people. Can I just say to you today that God cares about whatever it is you're going through? Whatever your heartache is, whatever it is, wherever the chains are, and you feel like Peter, there's 2 chains around you, and whatever it is, for some of you it's finances, for some of you it's a kid, for some of you it's a marriage, some of you, you're chained to something. But God sees your chains. God sees into your prison cell. 1 Peter 5:7, the Apostle Peter said this, cast all your anxieties. Got any anxieties? A couple. Cast all your anxieties on him, and there's a reason why. Because he cares for you. Isn't that a great verse? It's so easy to remember. 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 7, it says this, cast all your anxieties on him because he cares for you. Say it with me. Cast all your anxiety on him because you didn't expect it. So you're like, what? We're going to participate. Say it at home. Say it in the sanctuary. Say it with me. Are you ready? 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 7. Cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. Isn't that great? What I like is the modern church just believes God hears us. They just put it in God's hand. God hears the problem. You know what the modern church would be doing? We'd be planning a jailbreak. Or a protest. Somebody would be putting together a GoFundMe for Peter. You know what they did? They prayed. They said, God, here you go. Let me give you one more thing. Well, a few more. Number 3, not only do I believe God hears and God cares, but I believe God is strong. And this is important. If you're going to pray to God, you need to know that God is big enough to, and this is why many people don't pray. If you knew the size, the strength, and the power of the God that you're talking to, you'd pray all the time. You and your prayer buddies would be on hills constantly talking to God. God, you need to hear me, because if you just knew that God heard you. Notice how the Bible sets up this impossible situation. Peter's bound. There's 2 chains around him. There's no way he's going to get out of this. And then boom, God comes down and God does what the church couldn't do. They can't get him out of there. But the strength of God is displayed in this passage. Now, here's the thing. If God can get Peter out of a jail cell, guarded by all these soldiers, if he can get him out of there, you really think your problems are beyond the strength of God? Let me just look down at the passage. Look at verse 7. God sends an angel who comes down and stands next to Peter. Oh, listen to this. It says the angel struck Peter on the side and woke him. I always think that's hilarious. Just the angel hit him. God says in heaven, hey, I need an angel that'll hit Peter. There's a line of angels. Oh, we've been wanting to hit him. Angel goes down there, boom, wake up. What? Look at verse 7 again. See another miracle? It says a light shone. The idea of the light is that it's independent of the angel. It's not that the light shines in the prison because the angel is glowing, which so often they are because they stand in the Shekinah glory of God. But there's a light independent of the angel that lights that prison cell. It's not lit by the torch. It's not lit by the angel. It's not lit by a fire in the room. Somehow, it's like God opened heaven in that jail cell, and the glory of God is shining down into that prison cell. And then look again at verse 7. It says the chains. What happened to the chains? They just fell off him. Isn't that great? God's not going to be bound down to chains. And then notice in verse 10, they just walk right past the prison guards. There's a bunch of them. God's not worried about the devil's numbers. One angel can walk right by all the prison guards. And then I like what happens at the prison gate. Look again at verse 10. What happens to the prison gate? It just parts right in front. It says, verse 10, it opened for them on its own accord. The word there of its own accord, it's just one Greek word. It's the word automate. Anybody want to guess where we get the word automate from? How would we translate that? Automatically. It just opened automatically. Automatically, that door just moved right. Look, but it wasn't moved by machinery. It was the hand of God. It's like God shined in that prison cell, and then God just took his little finger and went, and that prison door opens, and all of a sudden in front of him is the city. Makes me think of the number of times Jesus would just walk through walls, you know? And then look again at verse 10. It says the angel left him. I love Peter's response at verse 11. After he's seen all these miracles, it says, when Peter came to himself, he said, now I'm sure that the Lord sent his angel to rescue me. He just saw 5 miracles displaying the strength of God. Number 1, an angel. Number 2, the light. Number 3, the chains fell off of him. Number 4, the guards, they walk right past. And number 5, the gate opens on its own. Can I just say to you, whatever your problem is, your problem might be chains. It might be a prison cell. It might be a situation. Nothing is beyond the strength of your God. And you need to know that when you pray. That you've got not only a God who cares. Look, there's a lot of people who care, but they can't do anything about your situation. That's not God. God can do a lot about your situation. So God hears, God cares, God is strong. Number, what are we on, 4? I wrote this down. God is just. And you need to pray, you need to believe this about God when you pray. That you've got a just God. When you lay a problem in his hands, he's just. Question. What happened to evil Herod? The righteous are rescued, but what happens to Herod? Here's something that's so important for the modern church for you to hear. It's this. God will punish evil in his way, in his time, in his season. But it's not up to me and you to solve the problem of evil or evil men. God's capable of punishing wickedness on his own. My job is to lay it before the Lord. And so in a culture of always angry people, that's not supposed to be us. We're supposed to be filled with the joy of Jesus Christ, and here's why. We know that God will protect the righteous, that God will punish the wicked, that it's up to his sovereign throne, and I don't have to fix the problems of planet Earth. That'll make you happy right now. Is the world messed up? Yes. Are the evil people? Yes. Do I have to fix it? I don't even have to fix it. Doesn't that make you feel better? Walk out of here a little bit like, hey, there's a good God who's a just God. He'll take care of the problems. Let me show you what happens. Look at the rest of the story. What happened to Herod? Well, Herod goes to speak to the people of Tyre and Sidon, and they're going to be like, oh, He's awesome. That was a good speech. He's a God. I'll just read it to you. Look at verse 21. On an appointed day, Herod put on his royal robes, took his seat on the throne, and delivered an oration, a speech to them. And the people were shouting, "The voice of a God, then not a man." Immediately, an angel of the Lord struck him down. Notice the word struck. That's the same Greek word used in verse 7 for struck Peter. But this time he doesn't strike him to wake him. He strikes him to strike him to move him into the sleep of death. It may even be the same angel who rescued Peter comes down and strikes Herod dead right that very moment. Immediately an angel of the Lord struck him down because he did not give God glory. And I always think this is so interesting. It says he was eaten by worms. Now, I've known this story since I was a little kid, okay? And so just go with the child's imagination for you. I used to listen to radio shows when I would go to sleep because my parents, you guys let your kids watch TV, I would listen to radio shows, go to sleep, okay? There was a program called Arch Oboler's Lights Out, Everybody. And in particular, I remember an episode called Revolt of the Worms. And here was the idea. This is wonderful sermon material. Hold on, this is deep. Arch wrote about these gigantic worms that came out of the earth and ate everybody. It's wonderful. Great program. And it's scarier on radio because it's burned into my mind's eye. Now, add that to a child who not only listened to Arch Oboler's Lights Out, but also listened to Bible stories. The way I always imagined this when it said that worms ate Herod was I imagined that he did not give glory to God, and like Arch Oboler, the worms come crawling out and they start eating the king alive. He goes, "No, I'm sorry," right? That's not quite it. I was disappointed almost to find out that. This is actually, we know about this not only from the Bible, but from history. There's a Jewish historian named Josephus. And he fills in the piece there that's missing. It says that on that day, Herod had violent abdominal pains and that he died 5 days later in suffering. He probably had intestinal ringworms. I think so the guy's full of worms. That's what it means when he was eaten by worms. He's eaten from the inside out. It's ironic, isn't it? Herod comes out and his robes are shimmering and he looks beautiful and he makes this great speech. On the outside, he's full of glory, but on the inside, he's being eaten by worms. Isn't that amazing? Is God a just God or what? God can take care. Look, if God can rescue the righteous Peter, he'll protect the righteous. He'll take care of you. And, beloved, if God can strike down the wicked Herod, God can take care of the problem of evil today. God can take care of the wicked. That God is just means I can trust him with the problem of evil. He's a just God. He can take care of it. He knows how to deal with evil men on the earth. And in fact, God's justice comes out of his goodness. He's a good God. It means that he is a just God because a good God has to punish sin. He cannot leave it unpunished. But here's the thing. Prayer releases my anger into the court of God. So you're welcome to go to God and say, "God, this isn't fair. This hurts me. I think this is a wicked person." And here, sometimes you just need to lay it in God's court. Say, "God, I'm putting this before you." Some of you are mad at somebody and you are beaten. It's not them who are being eaten alive by worms. It's you who's being eaten alive on the inside. You need to lay it in the just court of the living God and say, "God, I'm just going to give this to you. I'm going to give this problem to you. I'm going to give this thing I'm angry about to you. And I'm going to trust you." Maybe that's the prayer you need to pray today. Is to give up the anger. Give up the rage. You're mad. You're mad at your mom. You're mad at your spouse. You're mad at your boss. You're mad at these people around. Some of you actually had people do really evil things to you. And it's eating you from the inside. And what you need to do is say, "God, I'm just giving this to you. I'm giving this up." One last thing. I want you to believe not only that God hears, and God cares, and God is a strong God, and God is a just God. But the last thing I want for you to write down is this, that I want you to believe that God gives peace. If you're going to find peace, you're going to find it in the court of God. That's where you're going to find it. So the Lord's the one that gives peace. Notice what Peter's doing. What was he doing in that prison cell? Just sleeping. How is he sleeping? Peter, should you like be riding your wheel, or shouldn't you be a little bit freaked out? Most of us be awake all night. We'd be, texting, talking, trying to call the government, doing something. Peter just sleeps, like Jesus in a boat. Notice, Jonah goes down to the fish. He's not sleeping. God didn't give him any rest. Here's what I believe. Jesus is the dispenser and the ruler of peace. The Bible calls him the Prince of Peace. And Jesus can give you peace, or hear me, he can take your peace. And for some people, he's taken their peace away. There are some people God will let them have no peace. They've not given the problem to him. They've not surrendered it to him. And they live a life of unsurrender. There's some people God will not give peace. You say, can you prove that in the Bible? Yeah. Remember a lady famously named Pilate's wife. That's her name. I don't have another name for her. I'm sorry. I wish we had her name. The night before Jesus was crucified, she sent a letter to Pilate that said, you have nothing to do with that man because I suffered greatly. I've had no peace because of him in a dream. I think when David, after he slept with Bathsheba, he had no peace in his heart. And she sent word, she said, I'm pregnant. And his lack of peace then caused him to bring Uriah home. And then he murdered Uriah. And then he really had no peace. Because why did he not have peace? Because God wouldn't give him peace. God wouldn't give him rest in that hour. Hear me. If you're active in sin, do not expect the Holy Spirit to give you peace at that moment. What he's going to do is convict your heart. If you are resisting God, God's not obligated to give you peace. If you're being controlled this hour by the flesh, God's number one desire is not to give you peace, is to rock your boat to bring you back to him, to stir your heart. But if you're obedient to God, if you are, as the Bible says, if you are righteous, you're seeking hard after God and you're loving him, then I think God gives to his children supernatural peace. The Bible calls in the book of Philippians a peace that surpasses all understanding. It doesn't make sense. Your friends are saying to you, how are you at peace? This doesn't make sense. And you say, I just have the peace. Have you ever experienced this? I have the peace of the Lord. Had a friend going through a tough trial recently. It's anxiety, fear, couldn't sleep. The greatest text I got wasn't the problem's been resolved, which it would be. The greatest text I saw was from his wife texted the group and said, God's given me peace. Because I knew God would solve the problem. The greatest thing God could give her at that moment was that God give peace. I'll give you time of invitation. Maybe at home you just need to take a moment. Maybe here in this sanctuary you need to take a moment. And I want you to ask God to give you the desire to pray. Just stir in my heart, God, a desire, because I think people who want to pray, you're going to find that person, you're going to pray. Just ask God. Have you ever done that? Yeah, some of you are like, I want to. Some of you are like, I don't even want to. Would you want to? Just ask God. God, give me a desire to pray. And this week, you're going to have troubles. You don't have to invent the trouble. It's already coming. Amen? So you don't have to come up with troubles. I just want you to do this. I want you to pray. And I want you to pray believing those 5 things about God. And then I just want for you to consider this. Who prays with you? Oh, my prayers are a kind of quiet, silent thing. Yeah, and they're also not real consistent. So you get a gym buddy. No, I don't preach. I don't go to the gym either. We'll stop it. Would you get a prayer buddy? Would you get somebody that will help you exercise that spiritual muscle and stretch it out? Invite someone to pray with you. What an honor. That's what we should do. Look, in this church, you should have somebody that you pray with, that you talk to. And then, can I give you this encouragement? In this hour of American history, I would encourage you to have the joy of the Lord and trust the justice of our God. He's a righteous God. He can take care of the problem of evil. And one of the dangers of the church is that church, not you guys, but church in general is becoming angry people. And I am not called to be an angry person. I'm called to be a joyful person. And the gospel has always thrived in adversity. This is our hour to stand, and the trouble is that the church's hour to stand at this moment, we're paralyzed. We're paralyzed by anger. We're paralyzed by rage, when actually we're supposed to live by the fruit of the Spirit. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, self-control are supposed to be the things that exude from us in hours like this. How am I going to have that when there's all this trouble around me because I'm a person of prayer and I believe that God, a just God, actually is sovereign over this earth? And that changes my heart. And then some of you, you're wound up inside. You're worried about a problem. Would you do this today? Would you pause and would you just ask God for his peace? Because God knows how to handle the situation. In fact, God has ideas you haven't even thought of to answer your prayer request. The church wasn't praying, God, would you release Peter? They had no idea God was going to do it that way. Our problem is we come to God with all these suggestions about how he can do it. He goes, well, stop it. I'm way more creative than you. You don't have to tell God how he's going to answer your problem. Just give it to God and then ask him, God, would you give me peace in this situation? Because I know you're bigger than this problem.